Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Leader Show, where we talk key issues and news at the intersection of business and technology in hopes of making you a better digital leader. We're live every Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio recording is available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up AI. We're a professional association, media, and peer-to-peer research network that provides education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally, all around automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. Today, we're discussing truth, trust, and transformers coexisting with GenAI, plus headlines for digital leaders from the world of enterprise technology. Thanks to our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite, their cloud ERP helps provide real-time visibility into operational and financial performance. Podcast followers can get preferred pricing of up to 45% off at irpaai.com/NetSuite. I'm joined by Chris Cerdak. He's a senior analyst at AI, former White House Chief Transformation Office Advisor, partner for digital transformation at Gartner, and AI practice lead at EY. Chris, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good morning. And we came up with truth, trust, and transformers without using ChatGPT. That was pretty clever.
That's becoming more and more rare. Although if you used it last week, you might have had some trouble. The world is finally pushing back and saying, hey, wait a second. This thing makes mistakes.
It would appear that the great noticing is upon us finally. It only took $3, $4, $5 trillion. So, who says we don't learn fast?
They're getting some heat this week. As just to jump right into headlines, I saw this crazy headline. I think it was yesterday. This is the first time I saw it. That Perplexity is making a bid, an unsolicited bid, to Google for to buy Chrome for $35 billion. What do you think?
You can read so much into this. They're making a bid, unsolicited bid, with money that they don't have.
They've got investors. They've got investors, supposedly, according to the Journal.
Supposedly, right? To one of the largest companies in the world who doesn't need to sell this. And what I'm struck by is what an explicit admission that the last mile of the supply chain of data is so critically important. This is a screaming plea of I have to own the desktop. I have to own the interface to the humans. I have to own the source of the data that we're collecting. I, for one, am thrilled because it shows me just how valuable my eyeball minutes really are. I don't think Google's going to agree to it, but it clearly shows the true value chain in this whole AI thing is data, not the algorithms. It's very telling.
Well, I saw it at first, and I didn't read as much into it maybe as you did. I said, "Oh wow, what nonsense! This is more of just the AI LLM wars going on." But then I saw something which is a good point. I think it was from LinkedIn. This is in the midst of a federal judge considering whether or not they're going to order Google to sell Chrome after that ruling last year that they illegally monopolized the search market. So maybe Perplexity knows something we don't, or is at least trying to bet on that, hedge that, say, hey, if they get forced to sell, they want to be first online.
So we either need to look at the Pelosi. There's the Pelosi thing that keeps track of whatever she invests in, and you just follow her, or the anti-Kramer mutual fund. Kramer on CNN. It's like where you do whatever, the opposite of whatever he recommends. This might actually be a really good play.
Interesting. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is threatening to sue Apple, saying that their app store listings are unfairly deprioritizing the XAI chatbot. And Grok, I guess, is fifth on the list. ChatGPT is first. He's saying that's because of their partnership, and wants to know if there's politics involved. Apple and OpenAI partnered up in back in 2024. It seems like it's 10 years ago. That was last year, but for Apple Intelligence.
So the deplatformer in chief is pointing the finger at people trying to deplatform him. Is that what's going on here?
It seemed like a little kettle black thing. Yeah.
Well, for people just to expose the game for what it is. I mean, kudos to these guys for keeping it entertaining, but literally just how dare you deplatform me while I'm deplatforming you? You can't make this up. It's incredibly entertaining. Case in point, hey, yeah, this stuff has been going on for ages. It's always been this way. The manipulation of who's number one and all that kind of stuff, pay to play. Welcome to the internet. It's been this way for decades. It's just funny that they're now that it's really affecting where they think they're going in the next 5 years. Now they're willing to just say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, there's some precedent here, though, right? I mean,
Yes.
the EU has fined Apple $2 billion, and this year another 500 million for antitrust infractions, involving the App Store. State of California, a similar thing. So there's obviously been that accusation before, but yes, the timing is always interesting. Of these things.
And we also have to keep in mind that a lot of these giant companies have been incredibly sophisticated in avoiding taxes and things like that, and a lot of this regulatory action and so forth could very arguably be. There may be some legitimacy in saying you have monopoly power, but you can also just say it's a tax, and somehow we got to pay for everything that we're spending money on. So a lot of this regulatory action may very well simply be a different form of taxation. Lots of lawyers are getting really wealthy off of all of this. That's we can say that much about it. I'm not sure it's terribly productive, but it certainly buys a lot of Porsches and mansions in Newport.
Yeah. And, all while the juxtaposition is interesting of, your former consulting business friends just getting killed. I mean,
Yep.
Gartner's stock is down 52% over the last 12 months. Meanwhile, McKinsey is making news for switching from what they called AI assist to AI delivery, hiring more consultants, less consultants, more AI agents, less people, smaller teams, and really kind of embracing the AI thing, Chris.
Yeah, I've actually discussed this with a lot of friends in the legal industry, because the high-end strategy consulting, which I was part of for many years, is a lot like the legal profession, where there's tremendous pressure for people at the partner level to make lots of money, and they need to charge more. But there's a lot of pushback from clients to not, I need cost savings and so forth. So this sort of culling of the human costs associated with what is strictly a human capital sort of business, whether it be law or strategy consulting, was sort of inevitable, but it's awfully suicidal to a certain extent, because those professional businesses, whether it's accounting, law, in some senses doctors as well, and strategy consulting, it's all that talent pyramid, and you need people to come in at entry level and spend their time and build relationships and go up the associate to partner level and so forth. And if you're wiping out the lower levels of that talent pyramid, where are you going to be in 5 years? Who are the people that are going to be the future partners that are paying for today's partners to cash out?
So I think they're betting on not needing them. I mean, if you look at some of these numbers, so that they're claiming they've got 5,000 fewer consultants, others being actively reskilled. They've got 12,000 AI agents currently in use, so they're shrinking their average team from 4 people to 2 with additional AI. And they're in-house. I don't know how they built it, if it's really in-house or if it's outsourced, what have you, but their AI is handling, according to them, 500,000 prompts a month, saving 50,000 consulting hours, and 25% of their projects are outcome-based.
I mean, that's something that, myself being in the industry a decade ago, that's one of the things we said we needed to do. In the article, I think it talks about how they switched from hourly billing into deliverables-based billing or alternative means of billing. And again, we've been saying that that's a direction we had to go for a good 10 years or so. The challenge is that clients expect the savings to be passed on to them. So you're in this race between cutting your cost basis and still being able to increase the effective rates that the partner level people are getting. Again, while you're kind of chopping off the bottom layers of the talent pyramid that people are, and the work life pyramid that reduces opportunities for moving up. So it's it's a real challenge for anyone in the human talent-based professional services business. And I think we're going to get into some of this too, where can you really rely upon the what's coming from the AIs? People that thought that this was a great strategic decision maybe a year ago may have a moment of pause given what's transpired in the last week or so. We'll see.
Yeah. So let me introduce today's guest. We have with us Herb Roitblat. He's was the principal data scientist at Mimecast and Ignite, the author of Algorithms Are Not Enough, Creating General Artificial Intelligence from MIT Press. He's a recognized expert in the cognitive information retrieval, electronic discovery, and machine learning space. And he's built and sold 3 AI companies. So you've done this before, Herb. Good to have you.
Been here, done that. Bought the t-shirt.
So I just wanted to ask you as we start out, hearing these headlines, seeing what's going on in the news, but also the fact that you've as you say, built and sold your AI companies. What's your kind of general sense as to kind of where we are, business model wise, society wise? I mean, I'm just curious as to your observations of where things are going.
Well, I think in part this highlights the failure of scaling as a theory of artificial intelligence. There's 3 main theories about how we're going to achieve general intelligence. One way is we're going to scale. When we finally have as much computational complexity as the brain, spontaneously, magically, intelligence will emerge and everything will be wonderful. The second view is what we need to do is replace the connections of the brain. Once we analyze all of those down to the synapse level, we implement those connections and somehow magically out of that, intelligence will happen. The third one is the only one I think is at all reasonable, and that is once we understand enough of the cognitive processes that go on to make intelligence, and we can implement those, they don't each have to be done in the same way that humans do, but they all need to be done. And if you're ignorant of those, I think you have no chance of achieving general intelligence.
Chris, thoughts?
That's why I asked her to come in, because we're in violent agreement on the I think I've spoken in the past. Yeah, I've spoken in the past where we're approaching the problem from a very deeply and almost strictly left-brained perspective. Left brain is the part of our brain that categorizes things, puts them into buckets, tries to apply logic to it. And the right brain is kind of there to regulate all that and give meaning to all that categorization that's going on. And we're being strictly a left brain entity in what we're building in generative AI. And that's pretty much the clinical definition of a sociopath. So who could foresee that there'd be problems with all of this? And I know, Herb, you've done a lot of research sort of just in what is intelligence and how does it work? I know you've also worked a lot in what we call hallucinations. What's your sense of where this is coming from, and in what ways could it potentially be corrected or avoided?
Well, first, I want to say that by saying that the models are sociopaths, you're giving them way too much credit.
Okay, yeah.
They are, strictly speaking, stimulus response machines. You give them a context, they produce a surface level response to it. Sometimes that's useful. Psychology was based on the same kind of model for, I don't know, about 50, 80 years. And eventually the approach was destroyed because it's not very effective. That actual understanding, actual cognition occurs, and it's deeper than just stimulus response connections.
If I can interrupt for 1 second,
Yeah,
could
please.
you scratch the surface of behavioralism, which is what you're discussing? Because there's a whole bunch of people that could do a whole lot of new research based upon 30 seconds on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the hero of behaviorism is B.F. Skinner. And Skinner thought that everything was due to reinforcement. So, and he had a theory of language that said the reason you say Mozart, when you hear a Mozart concerto, is because in the past you've been reinforced for saying Mozart in response to similar sounds. And that Chomsky just laid that into the grave back in 1958, I think it was, and said that's just magical thinking. It's play acting at science, is what Chomsky said. What Chomsky didn't realize is that he himself was play acting at science. But the key here is that stimulus response all at one level is not enough to produce intelligence. It's enough to produce intelligent performance sometimes. I compare it to an actor who plays a part, there's a movie about John Nash, and John Nash was a brilliant mathematician. He had other problems, but he was a brilliant mathematician. He won the Nobel Prize, but actors don't deserve Nobel Prizes for acting in the same way that he did, for using some of the same words. And we shouldn't attribute a whole lot of intelligence to these machines based on that, because most of the intelligence comes from exactly how people set up the situation where the machine can just push it over the edge and deliver the final product.
Herb, our network is comprised of approximately half IT executives and half business executives who are trying to understand and implement, IT and certainly AI. What do you see as is there a single most misunderstood aspect of AI capabilities as they exist today in your mind?
Yeah, it's over attribution. I mean, the truth is, I use the same models everybody else uses. I do the same stuff that everybody else does. But what I don't do is attribute some kind of wisdom or something. I don't claim that the machine is PhD level intelligent, because there's a whole lot more to being PhD level intelligent than just passing benchmarks. On the other hand, I will say that the models can be useful. George Box was a statistician who said all models are wrong. Some of them are also useful. When it comes to large language models, we can say all of their outputs are fiction, but some of it is also useful. And if what we ask of it is something that is relatively familiar, we'll get reasonably good results. If we try to do something that is completely new, we're not going to get good results. So the story that I tell about that, it has to do with Einstein. And the point is not how smart Einstein was, it's how he was smart. And in 1905, he wrote several great papers, but among them was one for which he won the Nobel Prize, and that is the photoelectric effect. People knew at the time, the physicists knew about, if you shine a light on some materials, they generate an electric current. But they were mystified by the fact that the more light didn't necessarily produce more electric current, but the right wavelength of light did produce the proper current. And all of the people were writing about this and that. Einstein had an insight, and that's the key here, the ability to have an insight. And the insight was that the light consisted of particles and waves. It was both at the same time. And if a particle engaged an electron, it moved the electron. If it didn't engage the electron, it didn't move. The energy of the particle was dependent on the wavelength. Put it all together in ways that nobody else was talking about. That's the important thing here. He didn't just repeat the general thought at the time. He put things together that nobody else was putting together. And yeah, he was smart, but everybody does that all the time. They don't always realize it. And you don't have to be brilliant to do that.
I think I've heard ChatGPT or LLMs in general referred to as they're best used as a extremely enthusiastic but extremely autistic research assistant. Is that fair?
I don't know about fairness to autism, but yeah, they can be assistants. They can do stuff. They can search. A lot of people liken them to autocomplete on steroids. They can come up with things that have been done in the past. So reasoning, for example, they people claim that they do reasoning. The research that I'm seeing says they do reasoning if they've got a model for that reasoning in their training set. And if they can get a slight paraphrase of reasoning they've been trained on, then they do reasoning. But there's no evidence that I know of that says that this reasoning is actually causally related to the outcome. It sounds good to people.
Yeah, I always also wonder. I think Chris and I have had this debate, Herb. When we were talking, not pre AI, but pre Gen AI a couple of years ago about just social media in general, kind of feeding you back what you want to hear and creating these self-fulfilling, echo chambers and things. One of the things that concerns me is I think what you're saying is that the LLMs are essentially doing that on steroids. Yes.
Yeah, that's why we had the sycophancy problem before, because a part of their training set is to be kind to people. Chris talks about guardrails. I'll let him say his own quote about guardrails, but they don't seem to work. It was only hours before somebody broke the guardrails around GPT-5. Chris, you want to talk about guardrails?
We've talked about it in the podcast before, but they simply don't work. And I compare them to guardrails on the Autobahn in Germany. They're not there to prevent accidents. They're there to simplify the cleanup afterwards. And so I think when ChatGPT 4 first came out, they found that they could circumvent all the protective guardrails by writing your prompts in the past tense. And so once the cake of generative AI is baked, you're not getting the sugar or flour back out. It's done. And the guardrailing thing gives the illusion of control, but it really is illusionary.
Herb, in the book, you talk about insights and kind of human problem solving, saying, algorithms today just lack genuine insight. Can you give me a example?
Well, I mean, the Einstein story was an example of that. He had the insight to think of things differently. There is a long history in psychology of studying the problem of insights. And the problem of having an insight is that you don't have a representation already given to you that solves the problem. Solving the problem requires you to come up with a representation. So there's a classic demonstration of that lists out a series of numbers, and you have to figure out what the next number is in the series. And if you treat them as numbers, you can't guess. But if you realize that they're written out in letters in English, they're in alphabetical order, and now you can guess what the right number is. And so the models that we have now all start with representations. They all start with ways of thinking about the problem. They all start with constraints and directions on the problem. And they don't have the earliest part of that is, how do you think about the problem to begin with before you can even begin to think about solving it?
Well, and isn't that largely what we call prompt engineering? It's, the quality of how you preload context into what you're asking it is determinative of the results you get. I often say LLMs are a mirror. And if you ask the questions in the wrong way, it's a funhouse mirror. You're going to get an increase in distortion back at you.
But people don't really realize that. There was a paper that I saw in the Journal of the American Medical Association that compared three conditions. One condition was physicians doing diagnoses by themselves with no computer help, physicians doing diagnoses with computer help, and the computer doing diagnoses by itself. Of those, the computer by itself was vastly superior. What they didn't say in all that was that the reason the computer by itself could do it is because it had professional prompt writers experimenting until they got the right answer. The physicians spent 5 minutes writing prompts, and they were amateurs, and it was comparing amateur prompt writers against professional prompt writers, and lo and behold, the professional prompt writers were better. But the headline on this study was computer by itself, LLM by itself is better than LLM plus people. No, it's a complete misinterpretation. But but you're right, Chris. That's exactly part of the problem, that people attribute more to the models than they deserve. The models can be helpful in doing diagnoses, but they're not better than physicians at doing it, really. Except under really routine, you go in with a sniffle. There's a checklist you can go through, and the machine's better at going through a checklist than a human is.
I'm pretty sure that's a scene. Isn't that a scene in the movie Idiocracy? I'm pretty sure it is. You walk up to the machine and you tell it your symptoms, and
I wouldn't be surprised. I remember seeing the movie, but I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
So Herb, how do we get to true intelligence? Well, and what are some of the steps? If we have people that are researchers watching this, how do we close this gap?
Well, I think the overall general strategy is understand what makes intelligence in people. And we start off by making a mistake there, that we study intelligence testing as if that's what intelligence is. That's how we test for it. That's not how we implement it. The place to look to implement it over the long term is going to be in expertise, problem solving, insight research. This has been going on for well over 100 years, and the people in AI, almost no one pays any attention to it at all. Some of it was even done with chimps. There was a story of a chimp that they gave it two pieces of bamboo, I think it was, and a treat that was outside its cage. And the chimp figured out how to put the two pieces of bamboo together, use them to rake in the treat that was outside the cage, but nobody told them how to do that. That was just plain insight. So even chimps have insight, but the machines today just generally, well, not generally, they don't. All they do is say, here's the context, here's the probability of each token that can come next, and that's all there is. So you need to go deeper than just context mapping to tokens. You need to go to people talk about actual understanding, but that may be a mystic kind of approach, actual understanding. But they need more understanding than what they're getting now.
That chimp today could probably get about $100 million of Series A funding for an AI startup.
I'm sure that he could.
Call it Bamboo 2.
Probably some of that out there, right?
It wouldn't be safe. Someone's probably like reserving the .ai URL right now. Herb, I selfishly wanted to ask you to come in as well, based upon our title, Truth, Trust, and Transformers, because I know that you've been sort of an innovator in the how do we get better results from all this, and specifically focusing around how do I make these things more truth telling. Can you walk us through a little bit about what you're up to these days there, and potentially some breakthroughs?
Yeah. I think that we started off with self-curation. I wrote a blog post about self-curation, and the idea there was the models are trained on everything. They're trained on junk. There's no reason in a business context why they should be trained on Beyonce. I think that's your example, Chris. On Beyonce's tweets. There's no reason they should be trained on how to commit suicide, which is what researchers at Northeastern University got the models to tell them. But there wasn't any mechanism at the time when these models were first trained to do any selective curation of it. So what they ended up doing is just dumping everything in, bragging about how much they put in, and then trying to build guardrails to keep it from coming out. So the idea of the self-curation is the model has to identify whether something is worthy of being included in its training or not. And if it is, then on we go. The other problem with the current crop is they thought they were building general intelligence, so they needed to solve everything all at once, everywhere. But they lose money every time they do. So the alternative is to focus on less general intelligence, to focus on business, for example, where you can get people to pay for stuff. Sam Altman has said that even with a $200 a month subscription, they lose money on the general public. But instead, if we focus on business and we focus on training on business, then we can then we probably make money, and that's what I think we're going to have to do.
Heaven forbid.
But I think there's realization coming, especially over the last week or so, when, as you pointed out earlier, that the models really are not general intelligence. That they now general intelligence isn't relevant. I don't care. But I really do think that eventually it's achievable, but it's going to take a different approach than what we have now. And all these people predict we're going to get it in 5 or 10 years. People have been predicting we're going to get general intelligence in 5 or 10 years since 1956. So yeah, it's coming in the next 5 or 10 years, but it's like free beer tomorrow.
I don't get it. Like, maybe this is naive, but what's in it for these companies to get to this general intelligence? Because my observations have been, I think what you're getting at, Herb, is where the real impact and results and probably revenue is in what people used to call, and I haven't heard this term that much lately, but we used to call this narrow AI, right? These specific use cases that I don't necessarily need an agent that's going to be able to replace my wife and my secretary and my salesperson and my marketing guy, right? But I'm very happy to have an agent that can do something really, really well, something specific really, really well I don't want to do anymore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first rule of automation is find out what people don't want to do in their jobs and figure out what parts they want to spend more time on, and then do the automation to match what they want rather than anything else. But the Ponzi scheme that Chris mentioned earlier of, hey, I'm heading towards replacing all of your employees. We're going to have to put everybody on welfare because there won't be any more work for anybody. I mean, that's one of the fantasies that's being sold, and it's nonsense. In that regard, Microsoft recently published a list of the top 40 jobs they thought could be replaced by AI. I think number 2 or number 3 was historian. I mean, they obviously, whoever made that list.
Terrifying. That's straight out of 1984.
Well, no, it's even worse. but they obviously know nothing about what historians do. If a historian's job is to record what happened, write it all down, whatever is seen, okay, you can replace that. But that's not what historians do. They have to sit, they have to think, they have to process, they have to evaluate. They have to do stuff that these computers just are not capable of doing, and they have to do it about stuff that there's no if you'll forgive it, give the iterative part of this, they have to do it with no history. They have to do it not necessarily based on what they've already read. They have to come up with something new. For at least the universities I've been involved with, for a historian to get tenure in a history department, they have to write a book that says something new about history. Whatever their topic is, they can't just repeat what everybody else is saying.
Yeah, but are those roles, I mean, there's a couple of different arguments here, but are those roles relevant? Meaning, are they important? Yes, I agree with you, but relevant in this new age. I mean, we covered a story. Geez, I think it was a couple of years ago. We had somebody on who was an academic and a historian, and contacted like early days Wikipedia to tell them that a story was wrong, and basically got a response that that's what people think the truth is, so that's okay.
I suppose that could have happened, but my experience with Wikipedia is that it's much more accurate than that. Not just reporting what people think. And there's so many people who can change those things that bad ideas end up getting edited out. But aside from Wikipedia, I think that the general idea is that it was promoted as a way to replace employees. I think the way to view it is a way to improve productivity in employees. There was a very small study done that said that it didn't improve it, at least in coders. It actually made them slower. I don't know that I don't know whether that's true or not in the long term, but in that study it was.
Hey, Dan, so we saw this heavy duty 10 years ago in RPA, robotic process automation, where Herb, as you said, there's certain tasks that people don't like to do, and they're repetitive, and in that case, rule-based, so we could replace them. I think the challenge we kept running into with RPA, which was going to revolutionize work and automate and eliminate all these people, is that no one job that a person filled was completely automatable. And so I could replace 60% of you or 40% of you. And the idea was, well, as long as I have enough of you, I could get rid of that percentage of yous, and then you'd all be repurposed. But almost none of it actually happened that way. And I kind of see the automation here is this sort of the same, but more so. And it's moving a little bit up the intellectual value chain, if you will. Is that kind of consistent with, Herb, what you think? And I think that's also reflective in what you're saying, where it's a great assistant to a doctor or whatever, but is it going to fully replace the doctor? Probably not.
Well, I wouldn't go to one for anything but a sniffle. If they're not better diagnosticians than I am, I certainly won't. And I'm an amateur. And that's it. It's that if you really understand what a job is, you know that you're not going to replace them. On the other hand, there are jobs where we make people behave like robots.
Yeah.
And one of those was e-discovery, where if people who aren't familiar with it, when one company sues another, they have to go through all their documents and identify which ones are relevant to the case. The old-fashioned way they used to do it was to put all the paper in boxes and then have people sit in warehouses and read each page and decide whether it was relevant or not. Then in around 2000, technology started to come in where you could search through electronic versions of those documents, and then other technology came in that said you could use machine learning to identify the relevant documents or not. That had an impact on employment in the legal space. People who were being paid to act like robots to identify keywords in documents, those people, we didn't need as many of those. And so they were not employed. But lawyers have gone from averaging, a few $100s an hour to averaging over $1,000 an hour because their work gets enhanced by that, by the ability to get the information they need to run their cases. There are people who were robotic that aren't in that space anymore. On the other hand, I've seen people read the newspaper while they're allegedly reviewing documents. So some of those people were not exactly doing their jobs to begin with. But I hope that was rare.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that McKinsey thing we talked about before, but it almost seems so foreign, this idea of being charged by the hour for work, that paradigm, seems very antiquated to me now. I mean, to me, it's more about outcome and efficiency than it is about, how long it takes you, especially if you're reading that newspaper half the time.
Well, and you laid it out well, Dan, earlier when you talked about does all that money do the consultants get to keep all that money? The answer to that is no. If you can deliver the same quality service at a lower price, the competition will require you to reduce it. And part of what happened in the e-discovery space is that the competition drove the price down to practically zero. When I first started in that, we could get $1,000 a gig. Now you get cents, a few cents per gig, if you can measure it that way. So it's not clear that there's any free lunch in any of this, but I think there's opportunities to expand on it. And so, for example, in back again to legal cases, there never seems to be enough time to prepare for a case, for thoughtful lawyers to do their thoughtful thinking. And if we can free up some time to enable them to spend more time thinking, they will take that time and use it. Now, whether that applies the same to consultants, it's hard to know. I mean, does a consultant say, well, geez, if I had 10 more hours, I could do 50% more value for you? If that's the case, then automation will improve, I think, the funding they get because they're using high value. They're replacing low value work with high value work. But if that isn't the case, then not.
Well, and I have direct experience with this. Is that consultant using that extra time or whatever to make 10 more PowerPoint slides or 10 better PowerPoint slides?
Yes, that's exactly
and if
it.
it's the latter, there's an argument for it. If it's the former, do I really need more PowerPoint slides that just regurgitate something that was said last week to another client? Probably not.
Chris, you probably know better than I do about this, but it seems to me that the only way a large consultancy can take people straight out of college, make them business consultants, is by having a checklist process that they go through. First, you ask this question, then you ask this question, then you do this, and that's right for automation.
The beatings will continue until the PowerPoints improve.
Maybe.
Herb, one last question for me. We talked about these more narrow AI use cases, but do you see us getting to, or at least moving closer? Anything happening in the next few years that you're seeing that is going to make us move closer to AGI?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it requires insights that I think we've made tremendous progress in many ways over the last, say, 20 years. But they have depended on people having insights where they change the way we do stuff. So it was a great insight to say, hey, let's not limit our training to a million documents in this collection. Let's try to get everything. And let's build giant computer networks. That took invention, that took insight. That made a big difference. It didn't solve the ultimate problem, but it made a big difference. The next steps in general intelligence require insights that people do not currently have. They're really hard to predict when they'll happen. So anybody who says, oh, we're going to achieve AGI in 10 years, it depends on something they can't predict because we don't know how to do it. And we have to figure out, we have to invent new techniques, new methods that will let us do it. So, I mean, I think about it. I'm trying to write another book that the intent is to be a textbook for artificial general intelligence. And it's hard to write a textbook for something that doesn't exist. But what I want to do is give people the tools that they can then know what they should be researching and how they should go about researching it. And above all, how not to be bamboozled. I think a lot of what we're going through right now is bamboozle. And it's not necessary. There's enough good stuff there that we don't have to lie to people about what it is. But at the same time, the lies create pushback eventually. And you probably hear the talk about AI winter. Every time the AI folks have overpromised and underdelivered, people get frustrated by that and say, well, it must be a problem with AI. I don't have anything to do with AI. I hope that this time it'll be a more gentle landing where we say, okay, we realize we had too high expectations, but this is what we can do with it, and this is where the value is, and let's move forward with that.
Right. Very interesting. Herb, thank you so much for being with us. Really interesting conversation.
My pleasure.
Take
So
care.
Chris, any final thoughts? And by the way, it occurs to me that whenever you pick a guest, it's somebody that agrees with you. So I'm seeing what you're doing here now.
No, well, if that's the case, I definitely have to stop it because I prefer the pushback for sure. I just appreciate, it's funny you had said moments ago, well, we used to talk about like narrow AI. In the late 1990s, we called that an expert system. So we've been beating at this rock for a really long time, and it just doesn't want to split. But no, I to a certain extent, the dissenting voices are always good. So you're at least asking yourself, did I think of things that I didn't think of before? And so I appreciate Herb's, lifelong efforts to try to make this stuff work better. And part of that is just pushing back against the hey, everybody, let's run in this direction. It seems to be the right way to go. I think it was Mark Twain that said, if you ever find yourself in the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. So that's kind of how I view it. When everybody's running, hey, this is going to work great, I'm like, what's the catch?
Yeah.
So
sounds good. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you're working on anything, you need some help, we have a team of analysts happy to help point you in the right direction or give you some real insights. Go to irpaai.com/analyst for more information. In the meantime, we'll be back next Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. Have a great week, everybody.
See ya.